This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate tonight to have as our guest one of the finest young ladies in Alabama politics, Miss Cynthia Almond, who is a state representative from Tuscaloosa. Actually, earlier today, y'all saw another young man, 48-year-old Bill Poole, who was state finance director, who was in this seat prior to Cynthia. This is a very famous House seat up in Tuscaloosa, and we thank Cynthia for taking time out of her busy schedule. She's just come down from the State House. She serves on the House Ways and Means Education Budget Committee, as well as the State Judiciary Committee, which are two of the most important committees in the legislature, and she just got a bill out of Judiciary, so she's down here, took time to be with us on our show today. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
We had old Bill Poole, and we were talking about before the show, that seat you're in has a real history to it. I may have told you this one time, that Tim Parker served in that seat when I was in the legislature, and we sat by each other. We both were in the same fraternity at Alabama. He was a little older than me, but he was a Sigma Nu and I was a Sigma Nu, and he sat by me for 2 terms. And I don't know who was in that seat before him. Do you know who was in that before?
Oh gosh, I should know. So when did you start?
In 82, I was there from 82 to 98, and Tim, I'd been there before when I was young when I went to the legislature. I was 30 years old. And Tim was about 10 years older than me, and he came and he served 2 terms in the middle of my tenure, but I don't know who was in that seat before him.
You know, my dad was in the numbers changed slightly because it got redistricted, but he was there till 78, so it sounds like there was somebody in between him and Tim.
Did they ran from districts even then when your daddy was in there?
Yes, they did.
You know, one time people ran at large.
Okay, didn't know that.
Yeah, they ran at large. You know, Tuscaloosa's had a rich heritage of legislators, not just in your seat, but you go back in state history. Actually, Tuscaloosa's had 2 or 3 governors. And a lot of people don't realize Tuscaloosa was state capital. You know that because you're from there, but it was state capital because that park's down there, you know.
Capitol Park, we call it.
Maybe in your district.
It is not in my just slightly outside it. I do have all of the university area south of the river, but that's just on the other side of the line. But
and you go out and get North River?
Yes.
Silk Stocking District.
Silk Stocking District. So not all of it, but some of it.
I used to talk about that with Lynn Brooks, I'd say, and she got so tickled because she'd never heard that saying.
Yes.
And I told Bill Poole that, and I said, Bill, had you ever heard that before? He said, I never heard it before I went to the legislature, and who would use that term was Alvin Holmes. You didn't serve with Alvin, did you?
No, I did not.
Alvin was a character. He talked quite a bit from here in Montgomery. He was a character, but anyway, back to your daddy was there from 74 to 78.
That's right. Only 1 term from Tuscaloosa. Yes.
And you told me one time we were talking that he and Shelby would ride together.
Yes, they would sometimes. In fact, I ran into Senator Shelby and Annette, Mrs. Shelby, at the voting.
Did you?
In the voting precincts on Tuesday, I guess it was.
You saw him voting?
Yes, he came.
So Indian Hills is in your district?
Yes, Indian Hills is in my district, or High Forest.
You tell Shelby you and I are going to see each other on my show? You tell him?
No, but I will. I'll tell him that I was on it. I will tell him for sure.
You know, Shelby and I are good friends. Wow. We've been friends over the years, and I helped him in '86 when he first ran, and we stayed close friends over the years. He calls me periodically, and he'll want to have supper with me at the Bright Star, and I'll meet him there, and of course he talks the same stories like I do all the time, but he called me one day and I said, Shib, what are you doing? He said, I'm out here in my backyard. I got a new dog. It's a little Maltese dog, and it's I got to take care of it because Annette will get real mad if the vultures eat it. You know, because the little dog get eaten by, you know, vultures or crows or what, I mean, not crows, buzzards or eagles anyway. And so I saw Wesley Britt about the next day. It was at a reapportionment meeting, and he sat down by me. He knew Shelby and I, good friends. He said, "We need to talk to Shelby." I said, "Well, I talked to him actually yesterday. He's got some dog he was taking care of." And I thought that was very interesting. This guy was writing the federal budget this time last year. He was out in his backyard in Indian Hills looking at some Maltese dog. Now today,
Well, you know what? That's one of the things I admire about both of them is they have kept their same home and they have kept their roots in Tuscaloosa the entire time, regardless of all the things they have done.
I got a lot of friends out there in Indian Hills. Bob McCurdy lives out there.
Yes, mm-hmm.
I taught that honors class about twice a year.
Yes, I have as well.
Have
he has
you?
a great class. He does a good job.
Good. He used to be over the Law Institute.
Yes, yes.
They would teach all of us when we got in legislature.
Yes.
Probably taught your daddy.
Well, he's younger than my dad, but I do have a picture, a newspaper clipping of them passing the criminal code in the mid-70s, and they're in the same picture, so they obviously work together.
So your daddy served one term in the House?
One term. He said he had to choose between
making a living
and making a living.
Yeah.
That's right. And he had a wife and 3 kids at home. So.
Cynthia, did you ever think you might run for the legislature?
Well, people ask me that and talk about following my father's. I'm also a lawyer, as you know. Yeah. My dad was a lawyer. He's deceased now, but I certainly didn't set out to do exactly what my dad did, but I think it just is in the genes. And knew he loved it. I was exposed to it, obviously, as a child, and because of that, I just always had an interest in doing something. I just didn't know what. Now, as you also know, I started out on the city council.
I knew that. I was going to ask you how long you were on the city council.
16 years.
I thought it was a while.
Yeah, it was a while, 4 terms. So that's where I started. My kids were little at the time, and it was the best way for me to sort of dip my toe in the water to see if I liked it and be as least disruptive to my family and to my work as possible. And so that's why I started.
How many children do you have?
I have two children.
Are any of them in Tuscaloosa?
One is, my son he's married, and he just had my first grandchild. So.
Well, is he a lawyer?
He is not. He is not. He majored in building science. Both of my kids went to Auburn.
Is that right, out of Tuscaloosa?
Yes, yes. And he's in the construction industry, and he works in Birmingham.
Well, congratulations on your grandchild.
Thank you very much. It's a new era.
Yeah, I've got 3. All of them in Birmingham. Cynthia, back to you were sort of the heir apparent when Bill, he was in his 3rd term, and then Kay Ivey made him finance director, Bill Pooh we're talking about. So it was an open race.
Yes.
But you were so popular, I don't think about you ran unopposed, didn't you?
Well, I don't know if this was because I was so popular or just the only one stupid enough to do it, but that is correct. We had a special election in the fall of 21, I believe it was, and nobody else qualified to run, so I'll quote one.
Did you have an opponent
I did.
last time?
I did. So I served for a year to complete Bill's term, and then I had a Democrat opponent.
Not a Republican,
Not
though.
a Republican, no.
Cynthia, but your own good committees, how did you get Ways and Means and Judiciary? Because Bill was on, how did you get on Ways and Means? Been the government come in the middle of, would you go on Ways and Means immediately?
No, not immediately. I only got on it at the beginning of this quadrennium. I think they have in the past tried to keep somebody from
the University
of Alabama, because we have somebody from Auburn on there as well, Joe Lovern, and so they try to keep a balance there, and that Bill had served that role before, and it was sort of a natural fit, I think, and so I just am appreciative.
Is Lovern on Chairman Rules and on Ways and Means?
Yes.
That's pretty good, pretty good haul there.
Yes.
I didn't realize that. And Garrett's chairman.
That's correct.
Now, he does a good job, though.
He does a really good job. He has a great background for it. He works really hard. He's in a great position to spend as much time as he has to do the job that he has to do. So,
Cynthia, when we're talking with Bill Pooh, who is now the finance director and your predecessor in that House seat, he was, y'all are going through your tenure in the legislature. You've seen some unusually good times with financing. And Bill said, well, it's still difficult to budget even though you've got a lot of money. But it's better than not having any, though.
That's right.
But y'all had all the COVID money and everything. He was really excited about things that have happened. He talked about how you paid down debt. Yes. And y'all have budgeted pretty prudently, haven't you?
We have. You know, several years ago they implemented what we call the Rolling Reserve Act, which basically limits, you know, even though we have a large growth maybe in our, you know, the money that we receive, we're not able to budget all of that in the following year. So we're limited by, we look at the previous 10 years revenues. So that's really caused us to budget very conservatively, and hence we are in a really good position at the moment.
You know, back to what he was saying too, you know, when I was in the House, the education budget and the general fund budget were almost 50-50. Mm. Now, the average viewer does not understand that we have two budgets. Yes. They split that up several years ago, and they put education in one pot and general fund in another. But education's like 3-to-1 now, isn't it?
At least, yes. Mm-hmm.
Even over 3-to-1. Mm-hmm. You know, they had a split too at one time where higher ed got a certain percentage. That's gone by the wayside, hasn't it?
I believe. Obviously, that was before my time, but I've heard discussion about that, and I understand that they have some formulas that they work with still, but I don't believe it is what it used to be.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time to be on Ways and Means, doesn't it?
It does. It does. You know, there's a lot of we meet weekly, and always a lot of preparation for it. Judiciary, we probably have more bills on that committee even in terms of just preparation for the meeting each week. But I personally enjoy being on both of those. A lot of bills come through both of those committees, and so therefore by the time many of the bills get to the House floor, I understand what they are and how I would like to vote. Otherwise, it's very hard to understand fully, as you well know, you know. Yeah. What's in a bill. We have so many coming at us so quickly.
Cynthia, y'all have had a lot of hot button issues this session, and I'm not trying to ask your opinion on or your position on them, but you started out with the school choice savings thing, which Governor Ivey's interested in, and then the gaming came up again, and now you got thrown this IV fertility thing. But that thing has flown like everything through the House. That's the issue that Republican voters want to straighten out, isn't it?
Well, you know,
I bet you heard from a lot of your constituents on that.
I heard from a lot of people, both constituents and non-constituents, primarily from people who wanted us to do what it took to reopen the fertility clinics, and understandably so. And that's what we should do at 4 o'clock today, I believe, is try to finalize that. But there's so much more work to be done after that. It doesn't solve all the problems. It is a temporary fix that, you know, if we don't do anything else, will create other issues. So we have to keep working and try to find the best solution. And there aren't any great solutions at the moment.
If you will, explain that to me. Like, you know, that like if you pass the bill at 4 o'clock, which will be on the calendar, and I think it's going to pass, isn't it? What do you? Is that just a temporary fix?
It essentially gives immunity to these clinics and certain providers of equipment, so that they can reopen. In light of the Supreme Court ruling that came down, you know, it opened them up to yeah, all sorts of things, and this gives them immunity to reopen and to operate until we can figure out the best path forward. So.
Well, I noticed you're good friend. You're good friends with Terry Collins. She's sponsoring it.
She sits next to me. So
I wondered about that. Yes. Why y'all see y'all together a lot.
I sit next to her. I should say she was there first.
How long has Terry been in the House?
She's been there, I think, since.
This is her 4th term.
So did she come in 2010?
And the group with Poole, I think.
I think so.
I think so. Yeah. So what y'all address that at 4 o'clock?
Yes, yes. She's carrying that bill, so.
I thought knew she was.
Well, she carried I don't know if they called it the abortion bill or the right to life bill or whatever they called it, whenever that was in 2018 or 2019. So she was a natural fit for this as well. So.
Cynthia, what about so y'all will get that out of the house, but it's going to have to be revisited, you think?
You know what, Steve, that's a great question. I don't know. I know that the Senate changed. We originally had identical bills, and the Senate ended up changing theirs. I think we passed we didn't make any amendments to our bill. The Senate did. Maybe we're taking up the Senate version. I'm honestly not sure what we're doing.
Melson's got the Senate bill, and Terry's got the House version. Changing subjects, the gaming came out of the House like gangbusters, but it's got stalled in the Senate.
Right.
What are you hearing about the progress of that?
Well, just to back up a little bit, you know, we probably had the advantage in that the two people, Andy Witt and Chris Blackshear, who really worked well, they've been working for years, I think, but particularly this past year on trying to figure out how to put that bill together, had informed us along the way whenever we had the opportunity at caucus retreats or whatever, that, you know, what they were working on and kind of where it was heading. So we had the opportunity to sort of hear about it for leading up. And so then, so in a sense, that made it easier for us to pass it a little bit more quickly out of the House. And then I heard that the Senate was in very late last night, but I believe they passed it as well. As I understand, there's no sports betting.
Did not know that. On election night, they were up there meeting and passing.
That's my understanding. I was not up there, but that's what I heard.
So that you say something did pass the Senate last night?
That's what I understood.
And sports betting's in there?
It's out.
Out, okay.
And something else is out. So it changed, and
so y'all will get it back?
Yes, we'll get it back.
Well, I got to tell you this, as a commentator and columnist, I sometimes speak to civic clubs around the state, and I bet you, Cynthia, and I know you know this from because your constituents talk to you and you're close to them because you represent them in the city council for 16 years, and they used to calling you about issues, and they just call you now that you're a representative in the legislature. But I bet you in the last 6 years, I haven't spoken to a Rotary Club in the state. You know, Rotarians are usually Republican people, and I bet you the first question I'm asked is, Flowers, why can't we vote on a lottery? I mean, I'm telling you, the people are really they don't like this. I mean, if this thing doesn't get out in some form, even if it's just a plain lottery, I think people are going to be mad about it. I'm not trying to ask you how you vote on it. I'm just saying that if you go to Jack's or McDonald's and your constituents are in there eating lunch and they say that's your representative and they won't let you vote on a lottery, you know, especially when these Powerballs happen.
Well, and that's the important thing to keep in mind. It is actually just allowing people to vote.
Exactly.
We're not actually deciding yes or no. And I would agree with you. Most of my constituents certainly are in favor of being allowed to vote on a lottery. I think the difficulty comes in when you put the whole package together with the gaming, the casinos, sports betting. It's all over the board when it comes to that. And I think the leadership in the House felt pretty strongly that we've talked about all of this so long, that they really wanted to try to put together a comprehensive package.
Yeah. Now, polling statewide indicates if you put a plain lottery on the ballot, it'll pass 75-25. If you put casinos in full scale or some semi-form of that, it gets 60%. Would that be about the way your district would be? I would think it might be higher for your constituents are pretty sophisticated. Probably one of the most sophisticated in the state. They would, but they still, some religious people in there too.
Sure.
So I mean, it's like, what would you say? Would that be your?
I would think that'd probably be about what my district would vote. That would be my guess. Yes.
That's what I'm thinking. And you know your district
pretty well
because you represented for 16 years. You grew up there too.
I grew up there, and you know, it is impossible to know exactly. You know, you can have a feel for things, and certainly who you hear from, but often who you hear from are, the loudest are not necessarily the majority of the people. So I've learned that over the years as well. So you have to be careful about that.
I thought about one day I speak sometimes to those clubs in Tuscaloosa, and most of them meet at Indian Hills Country Club, and I was meeting there one day, and I still did my radio show on public television at the university then, and was on VUA, and Bernie Harwood, who's a retired judge, was maybe in the Kiwanis or Rotary or whatever. He says, I asked the first question I got was, and I think Bernie is like me, he must have a distinctive Southern accent, because he said to me, it wasn't the first question he posed to me, he says, Flowers, I bet you've never had anybody call you from your radio show and say you're from New York, have you? He said, neither you or I are going to get confused.
No.
Bernie has a pretty deep Southern accent.
It's a beautiful accent, actually, just true old Southern. Mm-hmm.
And he says, Flowers, nobody's going to accuse us of being from New York. Usually I get, Flowers, why can't we vote on a lottery?
Well, I definitely have had that question a lot, and certainly there are people opposed to it as well, and there are good reasons for that. One of the biggest problems is, as you know, we have so much of it going on anyway illegally in the state, and lots of confusion surrounding that about what's legal and what's not legal, and that was a big part of the push, was to try to just clean all that up.
Now, your district too would be one that really would like the savings accounts, the school choice, because yet Tuscaloosa Academy's got a pretty big population in your district. But Tuscaloosa wide, I wonder, the reason I asked that question about the school choice thing, there are enclaves and cities in the state that have pretty good public school systems, especially in North Alabama. You take Terry Collins District, for example. Mm-hmm. I bet there's very few private schools in Decatur. They've got really, really good public schools they're proud of in Decatur. If I'm from a Republican district, or if I represent Mountain Brook or Vestavia, I'm thinking, well, my kid, we got pretty good public school.
Right.
You're taking money out of my public school system to give the kids, people in Montgomery, allow them to pay for a private school.
Right.
So has that been a tough issue for you?
Well, it is a tough issue.
For what I'm talking about, that reason?
It's hard it's harder for me to know how people really feel about that than it is even the lottery issue. I feel more comfortable on the lottery, knowing how my constituents feel. It's all over the board. We have several private schools in Tuscaloosa, and most of them do a really good job. And some of those, I say some, fewer than 5, reached out to me and expressed interest in that. I would say I heard more from people in my district who are opposed to some of the original versions of school choice that got sent to us. I voted in favor of the governor's bill primarily because of all the school choice bills I've seen, this one to me was the most responsible bill that we've been presented. And I felt like some version was going to pass, and I wanted to get behind the one that was, to me, the least harmful to the public school system as possible. That's just the way I analyzed it. And I am a huge public school supporter. Also private school. Obviously people can send their kids where they want to, but it's important to me that we continue to educate and provide a quality education for all students. And this school choice will not help all students. So I hope that we will take time 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, to really analyze the program and see if we feel like it's been helpful and it's moved the needle on education in our state or not. And so
needs to be reevaluated.
I hope so.
That would be a tough issue if I was a legislator from a Republican district, and like you come from, and like not so much you've got some private schools, but a lot of those people. Well, I guess over the mountain people have briarwood and all that there, on their shoulder. But you go up there to Scottsboro and Aniana Arab. They got pretty good schools in Coleman. And if I'm a Coleman legislator, I'm thinking, you know, I don't know if I want to take money out of my public school system to let Montgomery people send their children in private school.
Right.
I kind of think that's the way I look at it. Did you see how those folks up that part of the state vote? They vote for it, or what? Did you pay attention to
I
it?
don't know how they voted for it. The one difference in this particular bill is that it is not coming out of the education. It's coming out of the supplemental.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's not
so-
coming straight out of the education.
Correct.
Okay.
So that was helpful.
Oh, so it's coming out of supplemental program. I did not know
Now,
that.
what happens in the future, you know, who knows? But, yeah.
Well, Cynthia, we hope you'll stay in the legislature a long time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you do a good job, and you're in a very prestigious, not just famous district, but you've had a lot of heritage in that district. Tuscaloosa, as I started out the show, has had a lot of heritage. Your daddy and going back to even like Ryan DeGraff and Reed.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
I'm talking about Ryan Sr.
I know who you're talking about. And
the governor
I
candidate.
knew his son, and I know his grandson, who's still running around the state house.
That's
so,
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Ryan Jr. and I were contemporaries.
Okay.
Matter of fact, we were pages up here.
How
when we
about
were little
that?
boys together. And
I got to do that too as
yeah,
a child.
I bet you did. It
Yeah.
was a good experience, wasn't it?
It was wonderful.
Do you know who was the best one to my pages? She was there when Laura Hall.
Oh.
She sat over there where she sits now, and she would take my daughters. I'd bring them up here to Page, and they would come home with their friends, and they'd say, "Daddy, Laura Hall took the whole day and talked to us about the bills." Because she was a former teacher,
Yes.
and I tell Laura every time I see her, I said, "Laura, you were so good to my pages, and my daughters today." My old daughter's a lawyer in Birmingham, 45 years old, ask about Laura Hall all the time.
Well, and she's still that way today.
She does the same thing with
She
your
keeps us
pages.
all on our toes, but she's the teacher's in her for sure.
Well, tell her I asked about it when you go back to the house.
I will. I'll
Yeah,
tell her
you
you
what
were
she-
bragging on her.
Do that if you will.
I will. I will.
Folks, our guest tonight has been State Representative Cynthia Almond from Tuscaloosa. We thank her for taking time out of her busy schedule. She's interrupted her day on the Hill, passing legislation and judiciary to be on our show, and we thank you viewers for watching. Hope you tune in again next week for Alabama Politics. Thank y'all. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.